I'll talk about what is a deployment slot, how it works behind the scenes, when we should be using it, how does it help, and when we should be careful that it doesn't help, or minimum expectations. Has anyone used Azure Web Apps, by the way, or Azure kind of? Yeah. Anyone use deployment slots? Good. Just a basic, when you have a service plan and you create a basic web app, if your service plan is standard plus, the pricing tier, then you have by default a production slot available. And you deploy your web application. Whenever you have a new slot you define, it automatically gives you a dash slot name, IP address, the Azure websites.net URL, and you have the option kind of to replicate your one-to-one match production environment, and you can deploy the code to your staging slot. What do they share in terms of the configuration? They share the connection strings and application settings, handler mappings, monitoring and diagnostic settings, and also web job content. The connection strings and application settings, you can be slot specific, so they don't have to be shared, but by default, whatever you define, it does share. What production only is your publishing endpoints, which means that you can't kind of go your live traffic, which is good. Custom domain names, SSL certificates, and bindings are not shared. Scale settings, your service plan scaling is not specific to. It is specific to the production web job schedulers and the site extensions also. You have to take care of production. So when you are doing a staging deployment, you have to apply those things, or you have to provide an extra SSL certificate, extra URL, or extra site extensions. Behind the scenes, so you have the two options how it works. Either you can, from Azure portal, you can select auto swap, which means that every time you do a staging slot deployment, automatically it swaps, so you don't have to deal with anything. Or you have the option to do the multi-phase swap, which allows you to do with a preview, which means also you can run your tests. The process is wrong again. First, you apply the config. Then it does, when you apply the config to your staging slot, it does warm up. It does a HTTP request to the root URL, so that or whatever you want to do, you can apply multiple calls as well, so that your slot is really up, warmed up. And then when you are ready, you do the test, and then you can do the swap. And ta-ta is the part. You have 4 options. You can do it through the Azure portal or Azure CLI, PowerShell, which kind of my example will be shown here, or the Azure Management API. I showed the PowerShell example here because it's more comprehensive, kind of more detailed than the portal and the Azure CLI, less capable of the Azure Management API. When we first create the web app slot, it's there. Then we deploy the code, and then we do just the switch web app slot with a preview action to apply the slot configuration. Then you are ready to deploy any kind of, you are ready to run any kind of tests. If the tests fail, you can complete the swap. If fails, your production is there, you can just swap back. So it is kind of minimum downtime. It's not zero downtime, because still during the hostname swap, there's a kind of a glitch, or your end users will not notice. But you can get around of it, or if you want to really, really zero downtime, you have to look for other options. It is testable. You are kind of running your tests after you apply the config, but also it gives you the A/B testing for each slot. You have the percentage defined, so yours non-production slots can have dedicated percentage of the live traffic to go to that slot, or your production can share that percentage. Rollbackable, because your production is just there, ready to reset, which gives you the flexibility. Some people do use for, I heard, disaster recovery, which I'm not quite sure if you really want to do it. You keep the slot there, just in case I want to do disaster recovery. I didn't put it, I don't recommend, but I heard that people are using. So the hiccups that you need to think about a bit kind of more in detail. Whenever I deploy my staging slot, perfect, but it's a public URL, it's publicly accessible, so you may not want your publicly accessible URL. You can have the rewrite rules, kind of blocking that address. Warm up, if you want specific root URL other than the root URL, if you have other things, you need to warm them up before that, so there's extra work required. Sharing the same service plan, because we have just one service plan, standard or whatever. It's not also scalable. You can't kind of go up or down specific dedicated to your non-production slot or the production slot, so you have to take care of it. It is just a sanity check, so it's not for auto-scaling. And the minimum requirement was it has to be standard plus. What if you are using the free or shared kind of cheaper version of the servicing, pricing tiers? Before the deployment, you can just kind of upgrade, scale up your pricing tier, and then after the deployment, you can scale down. You can do this with Azure for any kind of deployment database or any resource. And also, if the deployments, now I have done my deployment to the staging environment, and it does share some configuration, as I mentioned. Am I going to use the same database? Am I going to, if I'm using the Azure search, the indexes are going to be consumed, or any kind of dedicated message queues, or whatever you are using. During your tests, you will be consuming them. So either your tests should be really just sanity check, basic check, or you have to really duplicate your environment to another with the same database settings, with the same application services, so that you do run proper integration testing or whatever you want to do. There are some references, Microsoft documentation, of course. Also, Roslyn is always the kind of website I go and check. He's a senior software engineer, I believe, at Microsoft on the web app deployment slots, web app application. So he's always have good examples, detailed references. He also mentions how to use the application initialization module if you want to do this warm up and kind of zero downtime to handle it.